The Iliad by Homer, Book 13. You're listening to Classics Made Clear, classic texts translated with accuracy and accessibility for today's listener. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share these videos with your friends. When Zeus had driven the Trojans and Hector close against the ships, he left them there to endure the hard labor and misery of battle without pause. But he himself turned his shining eyes away, looking far off toward the land of the horse-riding Thracians, the Mysians who fight at close quarters, the proud Hippomolgoi, the milk-drinkers, and the Abioi, the most righteous of all people. He no longer turned his bright gaze toward Troy at all, for he did not expect that any of the immortal gods would come down to help either the Trojans or the Danaans. But the mighty Earth-shaker was not keeping blind watch. He sat admiring the war and the clash of battle from high above, on the highest peak of wooded Samos in Thrace. From there, all of Mount Ida could be seen, and the city of Priam was clearly visible, along with the ships of the Achaeans. There he came up out of the sea and sat down, feeling pity for the Achaeans as they were beaten by the Trojans, and he was deeply angered with Zeus. At once he came down from the rugged mountain, striding quickly forward. The tall mountains trembled, and the forests shook beneath the immortal feet of Poseidon as he went. 3 great strides he took, and with the 4th he reached his destination, Aigai, where his glorious house stands in the depths of the sea, shining with gold and lasting forever. When he arrived there, he harnessed his bronze-shod horses beneath his chariot, swift-flying horses with flowing golden manes. He clothed his own body in gold, took up a well-made golden whip, and stepped up into his chariot. Then he drove it out across the waves. Around him the sea creatures rose up from every side out of their deep hiding places, playing along his path, and they recognized their lord. The sea parted gladly before him, and the horses sped swiftly forward, while the bronze axle beneath the chariot remained dry above the water. The strong running horses carried him to the ships of the Achaeans. There is a cave there, wet and deep in the depths of the sea, lying midway between Tenedos and the high cliffs of Imbros. There Poseidon, the Earth-shaker, stopped his horses. He unharnessed them from the chariot and set before them immortal food to eat. Then he fastened golden hobbles around their feet, unbreakable and impossible to loosen, so they would stay there, firmly waiting for their lord to return. After this, he went on toward the army of the Achaeans. Meanwhile, the Trojans, packed together like blazing fire or a violent storm, followed Hector, son of Priam. They rushed forward, roaring and shouting together, hoping to seize the ships of the Achaeans and kill all the warriors there. But Poseidon, the earth-holder and shaker of the earth, rose up from the deep sea and stirred the Argives to battle. He made himself look like Calchas in form and in tireless voice. First he spoke to the 2 Ajaxes, who were already eager for the fight. "Iantes, you 2 must save the Achaean people if you remember the strength of battle and not the chill of fear. In other places I do not fear the Trojans' unstoppable hands, even though they have poured over our great wall in full force. The strong, grieved Achaeans will hold them back there. But I am terribly afraid for us at the place where that raging man leads them, Hector, like blazing fire, who boasts that he is the son of mighty Zeus. May one of the gods put this resolve into your hearts. Stand firm yourselves and urge the others to stand as well. If you do this, you might drive him back from the ships, even though he charges forward in fury." After he spoke, Poseidon, the Earth-holder and Earth-shaker, struck both of them with his staff and filled them with powerful courage. He made their limbs light, their feet below and their hands above. Then he himself sprang away in flight like a hawk with swift wings, one that launches from the high peak of a steep and rocky cliff and rushes out across the plain to chase another bird. So Poseidon the Earth-shaker sped away from the two Ajaxes. Of the two, swift Ajax son of Oileus was the first to recognize him. At once he spoke to Ajax, the son of Telamon. "Ajax, since one of the gods who hold Olympus has come to us in the likeness of a prophet and urges us to fight beside the ships, that man was not Calchas, the prophet and interpreter of bird signs. I easily recognized the marks of his feet and legs from behind as he went away. Gods are easy to recognize. And now my own spirit inside my chest pushes me even more strongly to fight and wage war. My feet below and my hands above are eager for the battle." Then Ajax son of Telamon answered him, "So it is with me as well. My hands grip the spear eagerly, my strength is rising, and both my feet beneath me are rushing forward. I even long to face Hector, Priam's son, in single combat, he who is always eager for battle." While the two of them spoke these things to one another, rejoicing in the delight of battle that the god had placed in their hearts, the Earth-holder meanwhile stirred up the Achaeans behind them. These were the men who had been resting beside the swift ships, trying to recover their strength. Their limbs had grown weak from the painful labor of war, and grief filled their hearts as they watched the Trojans who had swarmed over the great wall in a mass. When they saw the Trojans, tears ran down from beneath their brows, for they did not think they could escape the disaster. But the Earth-shaker easily turned their ranks back to strength and urged the strong battle lines forward. First he came encouraging Teucer and Leitus, and the hero Peneleos, and Thoas and Deipyros, and also Meriones and Antilochus, men skilled in the battle cry. Urging them on, he spoke to them with winged words. "Shame on you, Argives, young warriors. I have trusted that by fighting you would save our ships. But if you withdraw from this painful battle, then this truly will be the day when you are crushed by the Trojans. What a shocking and terrible thing I see with my own eyes. Something I never thought would happen. That the Trojans would come against our ships. In the past, they were like frightened deer, which in the forest become prey for jackals, wolves, and leopards. They scatter helplessly in fear, with no spirit for battle. So the Trojans before this would not dare to stand against the strength and hands of the Achaeans, not even for a little while. But now they fight far from their city, beside the hollow ships, because of the weakness of our leader and the unwillingness of our people who quarrel with him and refuse to defend the swift ships. Instead, they are being killed beside them, even if it is completely true that the hero Agamemnon, powerful son of Atreus, is to blame because he dishonored the swift-footed son of Peleus. Still, that is no reason for us to give up the fighting. Let us heal this quickly. The hearts of noble men can be healed. But you, who are the best warriors in the army, can no longer honorably give up your fierce courage in battle. I would not argue with a man who stayed away from battle because he was weak. But with you my heart is angry. My friends, soon you will cause an even greater disaster with this hesitation. Instead, let each of you place shame and honor deep in your heart, because a great struggle has now risen before you. Hector, strong in the battle cry, is fighting beside our ships, and he has already broken through the gates and the long bar that held them shut. So speaking and urging them on, the Earth-holder stirred up the Achaeans. Around the two Ajaxes, the battle lines formed, strong ranks that even Ares, if he came among them, could not criticize. nor Athena who leads armies. For the bravest men had been chosen to stand against the Trojans and the noble Hector. They locked together spear against spear and shield against shield, helmet against helmet, and man against man. The horsehair crests on their shining helmets touched as they bent their heads forward, so tightly packed they stood beside one another. The spears in their bold hands shook as they held them ready, and their hearts were fixed straight ahead, eager to fight. The Trojans rushed forward together in a mass, with Hector leading them, charging straight ahead in fury. He was like a great boulder rolling down from a cliff, one that a swollen winter river has torn loose from the rock face after breaking its hold with heavy rain. The stone leaps high as it rushes downward, and the forest crashes beneath it. It races forward with unstoppable force until it reaches flat ground. Then it stops rolling despite all its momentum. In the same way, Hector had threatened that he would easily break through the huts and ships of the Achaeans and reach the sea, killing as he went. But when he crashed into the tightly packed battle lines, he was stopped there, forced to halt. The sons of the Achaeans stood against him, stabbing at him with swords and double-pointed spears. They drove him back from them, stabbing with their weapons, and he stepped backward, forced to give ground. Then he shouted loudly, calling out in a piercing voice to the Trojans, "Trojans, Lycians, and Dardanians who fight at close quarters, stand firm. The Achaeans will not hold me back for long, even though they have formed themselves into a tight wall against me. I think they will soon give way before my spear, if truly the greatest of the gods, the thunderous husband of Hera, has stirred me on." So he spoke, stirring the courage and spirit in each of them. Among them Defies, son of Priam, came forward boldly. He held the round shield before him and moved lightly on his feet, stepping forward under the protection of the shield. Meriones aimed at him with his shining spear and threw it. He did not miss, but struck the round shield of bull's hide. Yet the spear did not break through. Instead, the long shaft snapped behind the spearhead. Defies held the bull's hide shield away from his body, frightened in his heart by the spear of skillful Meriones. But the hero Meriones withdrew back into the ranks of his companions, angry about two things: the loss of victory and the spear that had shattered. He went back toward the shelters and ships of the Achaeans to fetch another long spear that he had left in his hut. Meanwhile, the rest continued fighting, and the shouting of battle rose without end. Teucer, son of Telamon, was the first to kill his man. He struck down Imbrios, the spearman, son of horse-rich Mentor. Before the coming of the sons of the Achaeans, Imbrios had lived in Pedaios and had married Medesicaste, an illegitimate daughter of Priam. But when the curved ships of the Danans arrived, he returned to Ilium. There he stood out among the Trojans and lived beside Priam, who honored him just as he honored his own sons. The son of Telamon struck him beneath the ear with his long spear. He stabbed him beneath the ear and pulled the spear out again, and the man fell like an ash tree on the crest of a mountain that can be seen from far away, when a bronze axe cuts it down and its tender leaves scatter across the ground. So he fell, and his richly worked bronze armor clashed loudly around him. Teucer rushed forward eagerly to strip the armor from him. But as he came on, Hector hurled his shining spear at him. Teucer saw it coming and avoided the bronze spear by a little. Instead, Hector struck Amphimachus, son of Ctetus and grandson of Actor, as he was entering the battle, hitting him in the chest with the spear. He fell with a heavy crash, and his armor clattered over him. Hector then rushed forward to tear the helmet from the head of the great-hearted Amphimachus, where it was fitted tightly over his brow. But Ajax lunged at Hector with his shining spear as he came forward. The spear did not pierce Hector's flesh, for he was completely covered in terrible bronze armor. Instead, Ajax struck the boss in the middle of Hector's shield and drove him back with great force. Hector stepped backward from the two bodies, and the Achaeans dragged them away. Stichius and noble Menestheus, leaders of the Athenians, carried Amphimachus back to the Achaean army. Meanwhile, the two Ajaxes, burning with fierce battle strength, lifted Imbrius, like two lions who snatch a goat from the jaws of sharp-toothed dogs and carry it through the thick brush, holding it high above the ground in their jaws. So the two warrior Ajaxes lifted Imbrius high and stripped him of his armor. Then the son of Oileus, angry because of Amphimachus, cut off Imbrius's head from his soft neck and hurled it spinning like a ball through the crowd of fighters. It rolled until it fell into the dust at Hector's feet. Then Poseidon grew angry in his heart because his grandson had been killed in the fierce battle. Then Poseidon went among the shelters and ships of the Achaeans, stirring up the Danaans and bringing disaster upon the Trojans. Idomeneus, famous for the spear, met him there as he was returning from a companion who had just come back from the fighting, wounded behind the knee by sharp bronze. His companions had carried the man away, and after giving instructions to the healers, Idomeneus was going toward his shelter, still eager to return to battle. The mighty Earth-shaker spoke to him, taking on the voice of Thoas, son of Andraimon, who ruled the Aetolians in all Pleuron and steep Calydon, and was honored among his people like a god. Idomeneus, counselor of the Cretans, where are those threats now that the sons of the Achaeans once spoke against the Trojans? Then Idomeneus, leader of the Cretans, answered him, Thoas, no man is truly to blame for this, as far as I know. All of us understand how to fight. No one is held back by cowardly fear, nor does anyone shrink away from the terrible battle because of dread. Rather, it must somehow be pleasing to the mighty son of Kronos that the Achaeans should die here far from Argos, unknown and forgotten. But you, Thoas, you have always been strong in battle, and whenever you saw another man holding back, you urged him on. So now do not stop, but keep encouraging every man you see. Then Poseidon, the Earth-shaker, answered him, Idomeneus, may any man who willingly hangs back from battle today never return home from Troy. Instead, let him remain here and become food for dogs. Come now, take up your armor and go with me. We must hurry together, since even two men fighting side by side might bring some advantage. When men join their strength together, even weak fighters gain courage. You and I would know how to fight, even against strong men. So he spoke, and the god went on again through the struggle of men. When Idomeneus reached his well-built shelter, he put his fine armor on around his body and took up 2 spears. Then he set out, like a flash of lightning that the son of Kronos seizes in his hand and hurls down from shining Olympus as a sign for mortal men. Its bright flashes shine full and wide. In the same way the bronze armor around Idomeneus's chest gleamed as he ran. Then Meriones, his strong companion, met him close to the shelter. He was on his way to fetch a bronze spear. Idomeneus, strong in battle, spoke to him. Meriones, son of Molos, swift-footed and most beloved of my companions, why have you come back and left the battle and the fighting? Have you been wounded somewhere? Does the pain of a spear point trouble you? Or have you come with a message for me? As for me, I do not wish to sit in the shelters. I want to fight. Then thoughtful Meriones answered him. Idomeneus, leader of the bronze-armored Cretans, I have come to bring back a spear, if you have one left in your shelter. The one I had before I broke when I threw it against the shield of proud Dephobus." Then Idomeneus, leader of the Cretans, answered him, "If you want 1 spear or 20, you will find them standing in my shelter, leaning against the shining inner wall. They are Trojan spears that I took from men I killed. I do not fight my enemies standing far away from them. That is why I have many spears, and shields with strong bosses, and helmets and shining breastplates." Then thoughtful Meriones answered him again, "I too have many spoils in my shelter, and beside my black ship. There are many spoils of the Trojans beside my shelter and my black ship, but they are not close enough for me to reach right now. And I say that I have not forgotten my fighting strength. Instead, I stand among the front fighters wherever the battle arises, and men win glory. Perhaps some other bronze-armored Achaean might forget my fighting, but you yourself know it well." Then Idomeneus, leader of the Cretans, answered him, "I know what kind of courage you have. Why do you need to say it? If all the best men among us gathered beside the ships for an ambush, where a man's courage is tested most clearly, there you would easily see the coward and the brave man. The coward's skin changes color again and again. His heart inside him cannot stay steady. He shifts his weight from one foot to the other and settles uneasily, and his heart pounds loudly in his chest as he thinks about death while his teeth chatter. But the brave man does not change color, nor is he greatly afraid when he first takes his place in the ambush. Instead, he prays that he may quickly meet the enemy in the bitter fight. No one there could speak lightly of your courage or the strength of your hands. Even if you were wounded while fighting, the weapon would not strike you in the back of the neck or in the back. It would hit you in the chest or the belly as you pressed forward among the front fighters. But come now, let us not stand here talking like children. Someone might scold us for it. Go to my shelter and choose a strong spear for yourself." So he spoke. Meriones, who was like swift Ares in battle, quickly went into the shelter and took up a bronze spear. Then, eager for the great fight, he followed after Idomeneus, just as Ares, the destroyer of men, strides into battle, and fear goes beside him, his beloved son, strong and fearless, who frightens even the brave-hearted warrior. So those two come from Thrace to arm themselves either against the Ephiroi or the great-hearted Phleges. They do not listen to the prayers of either side, but give victory to one son or the other. In the same way, Meriones and Idomeneus, leaders of men, went into battle, armed in blazing bronze. Meriones spoke first to Idomeneus. "Son of Deucalion, where do you intend to enter the fighting? On the right side of the whole army, or in the center, or on the left? For I do not think the long-haired Achaeans are being pressed so badly anywhere else in the battle." Then Idomeneus, leader of the Cretans, answered him, "There are others in the center who can defend the ships, the 2 Ajaxes and Teucer, who is the best of the Achaeans with the bow, and also a strong fighter in close combat. They will give Hector, son of Priam, plenty of trouble, even though he is very strong and eager for battle. It will be difficult for him to overcome their strength and their unstoppable hands, and then set the ships on fire, unless the son of Cronos himself throws a burning torch onto the swift ships. And great Telamonian Ajax would not give way to any man who is mortal and eats the grain of Demeter. Any man who can be broken by bronze weapons or great stones. He would not even give way to Achilles, destroyer of men, in close combat, though no one can compete with Achilles in speed of foot. So let us go to the left side of the army. There we will quickly see whether we win glory for someone, or someone wins glory over us." So he spoke, and Meriones, equal to swift Ares in battle, led the way until they came to the part of the army he had named. When the warriors saw Idomeneus, blazing like fire in his strength, and his companion beside him in their richly worked armor, they called out and gathered around him across the battlefield. The struggle rose up together near the sterns of the ships. It was like the time when shrieking winds drive whirling gusts on a day when dust lies thick along the roads, and the winds together lift a great cloud of dust into the air. So their battle clashed together in confusion, and their hearts burned with the desire to kill each other with sharp bronze through the press of fighting. The man-destroying battle bristled with long spears that tear flesh. The shining light of bronze blinded their eyes, the gleam flashing from helmets, polished breastplates, and bright shields as men rushed together in the chaos. Only a man with a very bold heart could look upon that struggle and feel joy instead of grief. Two mighty sons of Kronos, thinking differently, were bringing bitter pain upon the warriors. Zeus wished victory for the Trojans and for Hector, honoring swift-footed Achilles. Yet he did not truly want the Achaean army to be destroyed before Troy. Instead, he was giving honor to Thetis and her strong-hearted son. But Poseidon stirred up the Argives after secretly rising from the grey sea. He was angry that they were being beaten by the Trojans, and he bitterly blamed Zeus for it. For the two gods were of the same family and had the same father, yet Zeus had been born first and knew more. Therefore Poseidon avoided openly helping them, but secretly moved through the army in the likeness of a man, constantly stirring the warriors to fight. So the two gods stretched a tight cord of fierce conflict and equal battle across both sides, a cord that could not be broken or loosened, and it weakened the knees of many men. There, though he was already grey-haired, Idomeneus called out to the Danans and charged into the Trojans, throwing them into panic. He killed Othryoneus, who had come from Cabesos. He had recently arrived after hearing the fame of the war, and had asked Priam for the hand of the most beautiful of his daughters, Cassandra, without offering a bride price. Instead, he promised a great deed, that he would drive the sons of the Achaeans out of Troy against their will. Old Priam had agreed and promised to give her, and Othryoneus fought trusting in that promise. But Idomeneus aimed his shining spear at him and struck him as he advanced with long strides. The bronze breastplate he wore did not stop it, and the spear sank into the middle of his belly. He fell with a heavy crash, and Idomeneus shouted in triumph, "Othryoneus, I praise you above all men if you truly accomplish everything you promised to Dardanian Priam, who in return promised you his daughter. But we too could make you such a promise and carry it out. We would give you the most beautiful daughter of the son of Atreus, and bring her from Argos to be your wife, if you would help us destroy the well-built city of Ilium. Come then, follow me so we may discuss a marriage beside the seafaring ships. We are not poor matchmakers." With these words, the hero Idomeneus dragged him by the foot through the fierce fighting. But Asios came forward to defend him on foot ahead of his horses, which his charioteer held behind him so that their breath fell upon his shoulders. He was eager in his heart to strike Idomeneus, but Idomeneus was quicker and struck him with his spear first. He struck him in the throat beneath the chin and drove the bronze spear straight through. The man fell like an oak, or a white poplar, or a tall pine tree that carpenters in the mountains cut down with sharpened axes to make timber for a ship. So he lay stretched out before his horses and chariot, groaning and clawing at the bloody dust. His charioteer, standing behind him, lost his wits and did not dare turn the horses away from the hands of the enemy. But Antilochus, fierce in battle, struck him in the middle with a spear. The bronze breastplate he wore could not stop it, and the spear sank into his belly. Gasping for breath, he fell out of the well-made chariot. Then Antilochus, son of great-hearted Nestor, drove the horses away from the Trojans and brought them among the strong, grieved Achaeans. Meanwhile, Deiphobus, grieving for Asius, came close to Idomeneus and hurled his shining spear at him. But Idomeneus saw it coming and avoided the bronze weapon, for he had crouched beneath the round shield he carried. The shield was made with layers of oxhide and bright bronze, fitted with 2 strong crossbars, and he had gathered himself completely beneath it. The bronze spear flew over him, and his shield rang sharply as the weapon glanced away. Yet Deiphobus did not throw his spear in vain. He struck Hypsenor, son of Hippasus, shepherd of the people, in the liver beneath the ribs, and at once his knees lost their strength. Then Deiphobus shouted in fierce triumph, "Asius does not lie here unavenged. I think that as he goes down to the strong-gated house of Hades, he will be glad in his heart, because I have given him a companion for the journey." When he spoke these words, sorrow came over the Argives. That boast stirred the spirit of Antilochus more than anyone else, wise in battle though he was. Yet, grieved as he was, he did not neglect his fallen companion. Instead, he ran forward, stood over him, and covered him with his great shield. Then 2 steadfast companions, Megisteus the son of Ichios and noble Alastor, stooped beneath the body and lifted Hypsenor, carrying him with heavy groans back to the hollow ships. But Idomeneus did not let up his great fury. He was always pressing forward, either to cover some Trojan in dark night, or else to fall himself with a crash while defending the Achaeans from destruction. There was there a man, the dear son of god-nurtured Isetes, the hero Alcathous, who was the son-in-law of Anchises. He had married Anchises' eldest daughter, Hippodamia. She was beloved in the house by her father and her lady mother, for she surpassed all the women of her age in beauty, skill, and intelligence. For that reason the best man in wide Troy had married her. But then Poseidon subdued him at the hands of Idomeneus. He bewitched his shining eyes and bound his bright limbs so that he could neither run backward nor avoid the attack. Instead, he stood motionless like a pillar or a tall leafy tree. Then the hero Idomeneus struck him with his spear in the middle of the chest and shattered the bronze armor that before had protected his body from destruction. Alcathous cried out loudly as the spear struck him, and he fell with a crash. The spear stood fast in his heart, and the heart, still beating, shook the butt of the spear. But then mighty Ares took the life from him, and Idomeneus shouted in fierce triumph, "Deiphobos, shall we say this is a fair exchange, 3 men for 1, since you yourself were boasting so loudly? Strange man. Come then, stand up against me yourself, so you may see what kind of man I am, the son of Zeus, come here to face you. Zeus first fathered Minos in Crete, the guardian of his people. And Minos in turn fathered a blameless son, Deucalion. Deucalion fathered me, lord over many men in wide Crete. Now my ships have carried me here to be a curse to you, to your father, and to the rest of the Trojans." So he spoke, and Deiphobos' mind was divided. He wondered whether he should withdraw and seek out some other great-hearted Trojan to stand with him, or whether he should try the fight alone. As he considered it, this seemed the wiser course, to go to Aeneas. He found him standing at the edge of the battle, for Aeneas was always angry with noble Priam, because, though he was a great man, Priam gave him no honor among the Trojans. Standing near him, Deiphobos spoke winged words. "Aeneas, counselor of the Trojans, now there is great need for you to defend your brother-in-law, if this bond of kinship means anything to you. Come, let us go help Alcathous, who was your sister's husband, and who once raised you in his house when you were still a child. Now spear-famed Idomeneus has killed him." So he spoke, and stirred the spirit in Aeneas's chest. Aeneas set out against Idomeneus, eager for battle. But no fear seized Idomeneus like a young and inexperienced man. Instead, he stood firm like a wild boar in the mountains that trusts in its strength and stands against the great crowd of men coming upon it in a lonely place. The bristles rise along its back, its eyes blaze like fire, and it sharpens its tusks, eager to fight off both dogs and men. So spear-famed Idomeneus stood his ground, and would not retreat before Aeneas coming against him, but shouted to his companions, looking toward Ascalaphos, Aphareus, Deipyros, Meriones, and Antilochos, men skilled in the battle cry. He urged them on, and spoke winged words. "Come here, friends, and stand by me, for I am alone. I fear greatly Aeneas coming against me, swift-footed as he is, and powerful in battle at killing men. And he has the flower of youth, where a man's strength is greatest. If we were of the same age, and met with this same spirit, soon either he would win great glory over me, or I over him." So he spoke, and they all came with one spirit in their hearts. They stood close beside him, and leaned their shields upon their shoulders. On the other side, Aeneas called to his own companions, looking toward Deiphobos, Paris, and noble Agenor, who along with him were leaders of the Trojans. The people followed behind them like sheep following the lead ram when they leave the pasture to go drink, and the shepherd's heart rejoices at the sight. So the heart in Aeneas's chest was gladdened when he saw the host of men following him. Then they rushed together in close combat around Alcathous with long spears. The bronze upon their chests clashed terribly as they hurled their weapons at one another in the press of battle. But two men stood out above the rest in warlike might, Aeneas and Idomeneus, both like Ares in battle, straining to tear at one another with the pitiless bronze. Aeneas threw first with his spear at Idomeneus, but Idomeneus saw it coming and avoided the bronze weapon. The spear of Aeneas quivered as it struck the ground, since it had been thrown in vain from his strong hand. Then Idomeneus struck Oinomaios in the middle of the belly. He shattered the hollow of the corselet, and the bronze drove through so that the entrails spilled out. The bronze burst through, and he fell, clutching the dust in his fingers. Idomeneus pulled the long shadowing spear from the body, but he no longer had the strength to strip away the rest of the beautiful armor from the shoulders, since he was driven back by the enemy missiles. His limbs could no longer hold steady beneath him in a charge, either to rush forward after his spear or to avoid another cast. So he held his ground in close combat and beat back the pitiless day of death. But his feet were no longer quick enough to carry him out of the fighting. As he was slowly backing away, Deiphobos hurled his shining spear at him, for he always held a bitter hatred against him. But again he missed, and instead struck Ascalaphos, the son of Enyalios, Ares. The powerful spear went through his shoulder, and he fell in the dust, clutching the ground with his fingers. Yet mighty Ares, loud in war, did not know that his son had fallen in the fierce fighting. He sat upon the heights of Olympos beneath golden clouds, held back by the command of Zeus, where the other immortal gods also sat apart, restrained from the battle. Meanwhile, the fighters rushed together around Ascalaphos. Deiphobos seized the shining helmet from his head, but Meriones, equal to swift Ares, leapt forward and struck his arm with the spear. The crested helmet fell from his hand and rang loudly as it hit the ground. Then Meriones swooped again like a vulture and wrenched the heavy spear from Deiphobos's arm and slipped back into the crowd of his companions. But Polites, Deiphobos's own brother, caught him around the waist with both arms and led him out of the loud battle until they reached his swift horses, standing behind the fighting, with their charioteer and decorated chariot waiting. They carried him back toward the city, groaning heavily in pain, while the blood ran down from his freshly wounded arm. Meanwhile, the others kept fighting, and an unceasing roar of battle rose up around them. There Aeneas sprang forward and struck Aphareus, son of Caletor, in the throat with his sharp spear as he turned toward him. His head bent sideways, his shield and helmet dropped, and death that breaks the spirit poured over him. Then Antilochus, watching Thoon as he turned away, rushed upon him and struck, cutting the whole vein that runs along the back up to the neck. When he severed it, Thoon collapsed backward in the dust, stretching out both hands toward his dear companions. Antilochus leapt forward and began stripping the armor from his shoulders, looking all around him. But the Trojans gathered from every side and struck at his broad, shining shield. Yet they could not pierce through to his tender flesh with the pitiless bronze, for Poseidon the Earthshaker protected the son of Nestor, even in the midst of the storm of missiles. For Antilochus did not withdraw from the enemy, but kept turning to face them. His spear was never still in his hand, but always quivering as he aimed in his heart, either to cast it at someone or to rush upon him in close combat. But Adamas, son of Asios, saw him clearly as he aimed through the battle. He charged close and stabbed with the sharp bronze at the middle of Antilochus's shield. Yet dark-haired Poseidon made the blow useless and would not allow him to take Antilochus's life. Half the spear remained fixed in the shield like a fire-hardened stake, while the other half lay broken on the ground. Then Adamas shrank back into the crowd of his companions to escape death. But as he withdrew, Meriones pursued him and hurled his spear. Meriones struck him between the navel and the genitals, where beyond all places, death in battle comes most painfully to miserable mortals. There the spear fixed itself, and he writhed about it, gasping like an ox that herdsmen bind with twisted ropes in the mountains and drag away unwilling. So he struggled for a little while, but not for long, until the hero Meriones came close and pulled the spear from his body. Then darkness closed over his eyes. Meanwhile, Helenos struck Deipyros near at hand on the temple with a great Thracian sword and shattered his helmet. It fell spinning to the ground, and one of the Achaeans picked it up as it rolled among the feet of the fighters. But dark night covered the eyes of Deipyros. Grief seized Atreus' son Menelaos, strong in the battle cry. He advanced, threatening Helenos, shaking his sharp spear, while Helenos raised his bow against him. The two cast at the same moment, one with a spear, the other with an arrow from the bowstring. The son of Priam struck Menelaos in the chest with the arrow, but it hit the hollow of the corslet, and the bitter shaft sprang away. As beans or chickpeas leap high from the broad shovel across a threshing floor under the whistling wind and the sweep of the winnowing fan, so the arrow rebounded far away from the corselet of glorious Menelaos. Then Menelaos, strong in the battle cry, struck Helenos in the hand where he held the polished bow. The bronze spear drove straight through the bow and through his hand beyond it. Helenos shrank back into the crowd of his companions to escape death, letting his wounded hand hang down while the ash spear dragged behind it. But great-hearted Agenor pulled the spear from his hand and bound the wound with a carefully twisted band of wool fleece, tying it with a sling that his attendant carried for the shepherd of the people. Then Paisandros came straight against glorious Menelaos, but an evil fate was leading him toward the end of death, to be struck down by you, Menelaos, in the dreadful fighting. When the two advancing warriors came close to each other, the son of Atreus missed with his spear throw, and it swerved past. But Paisandros struck at the shield of glorious Menelaos, though he could not drive the bronze through it. The wide shield stopped the blow, and the spear broke at the shaft. Still Paisandros rejoiced in his heart, and hoped for victory. But Menelaos, son of Atreus, drew the sword with silver studs, and sprang upon Paisandros. From beneath his shield, Paisandros seized a beautiful bronze-bladed axe with a long polished handle of olive wood. Both men struck at the same moment. Paisandros struck the crest of the horse-haired helmet at the very peak, but Menelaos struck him on the forehead above the bridge of the nose as he came forward. The bones shattered, and both eyes dropped bloody into the dust at his feet. He collapsed, curling in pain. Menelaos stepped upon his chest, stripped away his armor, and spoke in triumph. "So then you will leave the ships of the fast-horsed Danaans in this way, you arrogant Trojans, never satisfied with the terrible cries of battle. You are not lacking in any other shame or outrage with which you dishonored me, evil dogs, and you did not fear in your hearts the heavy anger of Zeus the Thunderer, the protector of guests, who someday will destroy your high city. You who carried off my lawful wife and many possessions when you departed from my house, though she had welcomed you with friendship. And now again you rage around our seafaring ships, trying to cast destructive fire upon them, and to kill the heroes of the Achaeans. Yet somewhere you will be stopped, though you rush so eagerly for battle. Father Zeus, they say that you are wiser than all others, both gods and men, and yet all these things come from you, that you grant favor to these reckless Trojans, whose strength is always violent and reckless, and who can never have their fill of war and battle. There is satiety in all things, in sleep, in love, in sweet song, and in the graceful dance. In all these things a man sooner desires to be satisfied than in war, but the Trojans cannot be glutted with fighting." So Menelaos the blameless spoke. Then he stripped the blood-stained armor from the body and handed it to his companions, while he himself went back again and joined the front ranks of the fighters. Then the son of King Pylaemenes sprang against him. Harpalion, who had followed his dear father to fight at Troy, though he would never return again to his fatherland. He came close and struck with his spear at the middle of the shield of Atreides, but he could not drive the bronze through it. Then he shrank back into the crowd of his companions, looking everywhere around him in fear that someone might wound him with the bronze. But as he withdrew, Meriones shot at him with a bronze-tipped arrow and struck him beside the right buttock. The arrow passed straight through beneath the bone and lodged in the bladder. He sank down among the arms of his dear companions, gasping out his life, and lay stretched upon the ground like a worm, while dark blood ran from him and soaked the earth. The great-hearted Paphlagonians gathered around him, lifted him into a chariot, and carried him back toward sacred Ilion. His father went with them, weeping, but there was no healing for the wound. They carried him toward sacred Ilion in sorrow, and his father went beside them weeping tears. Yet there was no recompense for his son, who had died. Paris was deeply angered at heart for the slain man, since he had been his guest friend among the many Paphlagonians. In anger for him, Paris sent forth a bronze-tipped arrow. There was a man there, Euchenor, the son of the seer Polydos, a wealthy and noble man who lived in Corinth. Though he knew well that death awaited him when he sailed, he had come in the ships of the Achaeans. For the good old seer Polydos had often told him that he must either die of a painful sickness in his own house, or go with the Achaeans and be slain by the Trojans. So he chose to avoid the grievous payments demanded by the Achaeans and the hateful sickness, so that his spirit might not suffer. Paris struck him beneath the jaw and the ear, and at once the life left his limbs, and hateful darkness closed around him. Thus they fought like blazing fire. But Hector, beloved of Zeus, had not heard of this, and knew nothing of how his men were being cut down to the left of the ships by the Argives. Soon great glory might have come to the Achaeans, for such was Poseidon the earth-shaker, who urged the Argives on and fought beside them with his own strength. Yet Hector remained where he had first broken through the gates and the wall of the Danaans, shattering the close ranks of the shield-bearing men. There stood the ships of Ajax and of Protesilaus, drawn up along the shore of the grey sea, and above them the wall had been built at its lowest point. There the battle raged most fiercely between the Trojans and their horses. There the Boeotians and the Ionians with trailing tunics, the Locrians and the Phthians and the shining Epeans rushed forward eagerly to hold Hector back from the ships, but they could not drive him away. They could not drive brilliant, flame-like Hector back from them. There too were the chosen men of Athens, and among them the leader was Menestheus, son of Peteos. With him followed Pheidas and Stichios and strong Bias. The Epeans were led by Magus, son of Phyleus, with Amphion and Drachios, and before the Phthians stood Medon and battle-stubborn Podarces. Of these, Medon was the bastard son of godlike Oileus and the brother of Ajax, yet he lived away from the land of his fathers in Phylake because he had killed a man, the brother of Areopis, his stepmother, the wife of Oileus. The other was the son of Iphiclos, son of Phylacos. These men, armored and standing in front of the great-hearted Phthians, fought beside the Boeotians in defense of their ships. But swift Ajax, the son of Oileus, would not now stand apart from Telamonian Ajax, not even a little. Rather, as two dark oxen of equal strength strain together to drag the compact plough through a fallow field, and the sweat pours thick around the base of their horns, while only the polished yoke keeps space between them as they drive along the furrow until the ploughshare cuts the edge of the field. So these two stood beside one another in battle. Around the son of Telamon gathered many brave companions who followed him and took up the great shield whenever weariness and sweat overcame him. But the Locrians did not follow the great-hearted son of Oileus into close combat. Their spirit did not endure the standing clash of battle, for they did not possess bronze helmets with horsehair crests, nor strong round shields, nor ash spears. Instead they had come to Ilion, trusting in their bows and in their well-twisted woolen slings. With these they fought, so they kept shooting thick volleys, and the shafts shattered the Trojan ranks. Thus the others in front fought in their splendid armor against the Trojans and against Hector of the shining helmet, while the Locrians shot from behind unseen. Because of this, the Trojans could take no joy in the battle, for the arrows struck them and threw them into confusion. Then the Trojans might have withdrawn in misery from the ships and shelters back toward windy Ilion, if Polydamas had had not come and stood beside bold Hector and spoken to him, "Hector, you are hard to persuade by words of counsel. Because a god has granted you excellence in the works of war, you wish also in counsel to surpass all others. Yet you cannot possess every gift at once. To one man, the god grants skill in war, to another dancing, to another the lyre and song. But into another man's breast, Zeus of the wide brows places understanding, good sense, from which many men profit, and he saves many people, though he himself knows it best. Now I will tell you what seems best to me. All around you the battle rages like a ring of fire, and among the great-hearted Trojans who crossed over the wall, some are standing idle in their armor, while others fight. Few men against many, scattered among the ships. Come then, withdraw a little, and call here all our best men. Then we can plan our counsel together, whether we should fall upon the well-benched ships, if the god grants us the strength, or afterward withdraw safely away from the ships. For I fear the Achaeans may repay us for yesterday's losses. There is a man by the ships insatiable for battle, and I do not think he will stay away from the fighting much longer." So spoke Polydamas, and this prudent counsel pleased Hector. At once he leapt down from his chariot to the ground in full armor, and addressed him in winged words. "Polydamas, you call back here all our best men. I will go there and meet the battle, and afterward I will return quickly when I have given proper orders." So he spoke and went forward like a snow-covered mountain, shouting aloud as he rushed through the Trojans and their allies. The others gathered quickly around the noble Polydamas, son of Panthous, as each heard the voice of Hector. But Hector went searching among the foremost fighters for Dephobos and the strength of the lord Helenos, for Adamashokuls, Santurn son of Asios, and for Asios son of Hyrtakos, moving through the ranks to see whether he might find them. Yet he found them no longer and unharmed. Some lay beside the sterns of the Achaean ships, their lives taken by Argive hands, and others lay within the city struck with arrows or spears. But soon he found, on the left side of the grievous battle, noble Alexandros, the husband of fair-haired Helen, encouraging his companions and urging them to fight. Standing near him, Hector spoke in harsh rebuke. "Paris, evil Paris, handsome, woman-mad deceiver, where now are Dephobos and the strength of the prince Helenos? Where is Adamas, son of Asios, and Asios, son of Hyrtakos? Where is Othryoneus? Now steep Ilion is utterly destroyed. Now your own steep ruin is certain." Then godlike Alexandros answered him in turn. "Hector, since it pleases you to blame me, though I am not at fault, perhaps another time I might shrink from the battle. But my mother did not bear me altogether without courage for war. For from the time when you roused the battle beside the ships, from then until now, we have stayed here and fought the Danaans without stopping, and the companions you ask about have been killed. Only Dephobos and the strength of Lord Helenos have gone away, both wounded in the hand by the long spears, but the son of Kronos turned death away from them. Now lead on, wherever your heart and spirit tell you, and we will follow eagerly. I do not think we will lack courage, so far as our strength allows, but no man can fight beyond his strength, however eager he may be." So the hero spoke and persuaded his brother's heart. Then they went where the battle and the uproar were fiercest, around Cebriones and blameless Polydamas, around Phalcus and Orthaios and godlike Polyphetes, around Palmis and Ascanios and Mores son of Hippotion, who had come as replacements from fertile Ascania at dawn the day before. And now Zeus drove them into battle. They went forward like a storm blast from the harsh winds, one that rushes down to the earth beneath the thunder of Father Zeus and crashes into the sea with a mighty roar. Then many swelling waves of the loud resounding sea rise in curling foam, one after another. So the Trojans came on in ranks, one line after another, shining in bronze as they followed their leaders. Hector, son of Priam, led them on, like Ares, the destroyer of men. Before him he held his round shield, thick with hides and heavily plated with bronze, while the bright helmet shook around his temples as he moved. He kept stepping forward all along the battle lines, testing them under cover of his shield to see whether the Achaean ranks might break before him. But he could not shake the spirit in the breasts of the Achaeans. Then Aias was the first to stride forward and challenge him. "Madman, come closer! Why do you try in this way to frighten the Argives? It is not because we are unskilled in battle, but because the Achaeans have been beaten down by the cruel whip of Zeus. Do you truly think in your heart that you will destroy our ships? We too have hands ready to defend them. Rather, your own well-built city will be taken and destroyed by our hands long before that. And for yourself I say the time is near, when fleeing you will pray to Zeus the Father and to the other immortals, that your horses with beautiful manes may be swifter than hawks, so that they may carry you back to your city through the dust of the plain." As he spoke, a bird flew by on the right, a high-flying eagle, and the Achaean host shouted aloud, taking courage from the omen. But glorious Hector answered him. "Ajax, loud-mouthed fool, what kind of word have you spoken? If only I might be called the son of Zeus, bearer of the sacred mantle, all my days, and if Queen Hera had borne me, and if I were honored as Athena and Apollo are honored, then surely this day would bring disaster to the Argives, all of them. And you among them will be killed, if you dare to stand against my long spear. It will tear your delicate flesh, and then falling beside the ships of the Achaeans, you will glut the dogs and birds of Troy with your fat and flesh." So he spoke and led the way, and the others followed after him with tremendous shouting. From the other side the Argives cried out as well, and did not forget their courage, but stood firm against the attack of the bravest Trojans. And the roar from both sides rose up to the sky and to the bright air of Zeus. You're listening to Classics Made Clear, classic texts translated with accuracy and accessibility for today's listener. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share these videos with your friends.